basketball analysis with over 70 years combined experience.
The Bob Ryan and Jeff Goodman podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time.
Well, everybody, it is Legend Day. Legend Day here with Gary Tanguay and Bob Ryan. Brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. Pick more, pick less with Prize Picks. One legend in Bob Ryan, another one at Jim O'Brien. And Jimmy, it is great to have you because I just remember the Glory BC days, and Bob and I, we reminisce about it. The Big East was awesome. It was BC, it was Peace, it was Providence, St. John's, which we're here to talk about, Louie. You know, you were just part of a great era, which we will get to. But we do want to talk about the passing of Lou Carnesecca. Just, I don't know where to begin because they just don't make guys like that anymore.
Okay,
go ahead, Bob.
He was an American original, a son of an Italian immigrant, a deli owner, Lower East Side, New York all the way. Nobody could be more New York than Louie. He prided himself on New York. He used to talk about his recruiting budget were subway tokens, and that's all he needed to recruit. Louie was 99 when he passed away earlier this week. And, it was kind of shockwave around the basketball world because there was nobody like Louie and everybody loved Louie. And as proof of that, my old friend, Jimmy O'Brien, who was one of the great BC guards in history, later coached at BC, but had a very interesting relationship over the years with Coach Carnesecca. So, Jimmy, welcome to our podcast and just go with you and Louie, the tale of two guys from New York City.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. And Bob, and Gary, you as well, when you said there's nobody like him, that's how I kind of phrased it with Bob when I actually reached out to Bob. And I wasn't sure if Bob was going to do anything about Louie. And I just said to him, if you are, I would like to contribute. Because you guys understand how this works. As we work our way through our careers, there's always those guys that, for one reason or another, kind of stand out. And so I just wanted to make sure that if I had an opportunity to kind of give back a little bit to Louie, because he was so very nice to me. So just real quickly, I grew up in Brooklyn, and certainly St. John's was on the radar. They started recruiting me when Louie was coaching at St. John's when I was a junior in high school. And back then, you can basically come and go as you wanted. You can see recruits as often as you wanted. You can take them to dinner as much as you wanted. And it really was very simple. It wasn't crazy like it is kind of now. So I got to know them very well. They were at all of my high school games. They were at my baseball games. And I was at all of their home games my senior year in high school. So I actually thought I was going to go there. But I didn't, because Bob Cousy was one of my options. And for me, a New York City guard, Bob Cousy, I mean, that basically was it. So now I have to tell Lou I'm not going there. And I was devastated by the mere thought of having to sit down and talk with him or somehow tell him I'm not going to St. John's. So I get my father involved. And I say, will you do me a favor? Dad, I can't call him. Can you please call him and tell him that I'm going to BC? He says to me, you got to be kidding me. I'm not calling him. He recruited you, not me. I said, I can't believe I got to make this phone call. I was 16. Then he says to me, on top of that, you have a game tomorrow up in the Bronx that he's probably going to be at. Do me a favor, don't call him. Tell him face-to-face tomorrow. And I'm going, are you kidding me? There's no way I can do this. So I don't go to St. John's. He was as gracious face-to-face, me telling him that I'm not going. He thought I was going to go there. So down through the years, I go to BC. We play against St. John's. I end up in the ABA for a couple of years. He's coaching Nets in the ABA. And then I end up coaching BC. He's back coaching St. John's, Big East. So there's a long stretch of give and take with him down through the years, through my career. At every single point along the way, he could not have been any warmer, any friendlier, and any more supportive to me, especially in my early days at BC. And Bob, you actually wrote about this. I mean, he was exceptionally supportive of me. So, after all this time, he passes away, and just who this guy was and everybody that you talk to has fallen in love with Louie. So you're right. They don't make him like that anymore.
Well, the tributes just came pouring in, and from the rival coaches, the Boeheims of the world, and all had good things to say. Apparently, nobody had the bad thing to say about him. So, what could you, would he tell stories? What was it like to be around him?
He was just like, he would search you out. And you know how this is with egos and stuff. If guys are in the same room, some guys are not going to make the effort because you're supposed to go to them all the time. And he definitely was not that way. You would walk into a room at a function, even after it was all over for me and for him, and he would work his way over to you to make sure, he'd always give you one of these. Jimmy,
yeah.
Jimmy,
Yeah.
He was just very, very warm, but he was a character at the Big East meetings. And that was a treat in itself. And there are so many stories with the personalities. And so when I first get the job at BC, I get the job in April, excuse me. And that May, there's a Big East meeting in Florida. And I'm walking into this meeting, and I am surrounded by who's who as college basketball coaches. I was probably 36 years old, and I'm like, wow. And so now guys start talking, and guys are going after each other because there was always issues about recruiting, who's bad-mouthing, who's saying what. And Dave Gavitt would oversee the whole thing. And some of the stuff that would come out is just hysterical. And Louie was always part of it. Always part of it.
Can you share an example?
Well, I have to be a little bit careful, but you'll get a kick out of this one. And I won't mention any names. But my very first meeting, Dave starts the meeting by saying, all right, first things first, we're going to get this right out on the table. I'm not going to be a traffic cop anymore. I don't want any more phone calls with guys calling me about what everybody else is doing in the negative recruiting. So if you guys have anything to say about what you're not happy with, now's the time to step up and say it. So a couple of guys get up, people said some things, but one of the things Louie said that just broke the whole place up. And you have to kind of envision how he was. So he stands up and he says, there's a lot of bad stuff that's going on out here. There's a lot of stuff that we don't like, and we got to get to the bottom of it. He said, but first and foremost, negative recruiting is one thing, but when it gets personal, that's something totally different. So Dave says, all right, Louie, what are you talking about? He says, there's an assistant coach in this league who we have to be careful of. He says, because he's telling recruits, why would you go to St. John's? Because Coach Carnesecca has cancer and he only has 6 months to live. The whole place cracked up. I mean, it was really, really funny. Here he is, Louie is how many years later? 50 years, 30 years later, still going. But some of the stuff was really, really funny. And that was Louie said, on my mother. I swear on my mother. If you were there, it was really, really funny. I remember John Thompson just going off on the whole thing. It was very, very funny. It was more funny than it was serious, to be honest with you.
They had a very special relationship, didn't they? Those two.
Those two, especially with the sweater.
The sweater.
That John started wearing, I wasn't sure whose sweater was uglier, Louie's or John's, but John started to get into that sweater thing, especially when they played against each other.
Yeah. But people don't know, we can't assume everything here. Louie Carnesecca, at best, was 5 feet 6 inches tall, right?
Right.
Okay. Did not ever play at St. John's, where he graduated, but was a baseball player. And in fact, played on the team, went to the College World Series, apparently. And he was a second baseman, which, of course, what other position would 5'6" guy have with second base, right? That's pretty obvious. So just think of Jose Altuve. But so the whole thing was he studied the feet of the master, Joe Lapchick, right? That was his mentor, correct?
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But so people know the site. Those of us who remembered Louie, the word gnome comes to mind. He that's a GNOME. He was a little guy, but boy, he was a guy full of energy. Huh? I mean, just
you guys know how the sweater thing started.
I'm sorry.
You know how the sweater thing started. When did Louie start wearing the sweaters?
I don't know how it started, and to be honest with you, I think he was just trying to be a little bit casual. I don't think, how sometimes guys will wear ugly sweaters on purpose, as John did. I think Louie just picked the sweater, and this was his thing, and that became kind of like his trademark. So, early on he was wearing ties like the rest of us, but the sweater thing caught on for him pretty good.
It was well documented in his obit in the New York Times. I should have brought it with me. That he was sick. I guess he needed a sweater, and for some reason he had this hideous sweater, and I don't know whether he really intended it as a gag or really thought it was stylish at first. I don't know which, but it really did become the thing. Yeah, and there's no question. All right, let's go technical for a minute. How would you characterize Louie, if anything, a St. John's Louie Carnesecca team?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that, because obviously they were very good, and they always had a lot of talent. I thought they were very well coached, but I think that he played a style that some of those guys didn't really care for, because they really walked it up. They played very, very slow, and they were very, very good defensively. They played mostly man-to-man, but a lot of it was before the three-point shot.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a fast-paced game when you play them. Every possession seemed to be vital, but they played very methodically. And, they had Chris Mullen and Walter Berry and Malik Sealy. They had some really, really good players. But his style was more methodical and it was more controlling. Mark Jackson played there than just allowing guys to go up and down and, like a lot of teams play now, wide open, shoot threes, play fast. Louie was the absolute opposite of that.
Yeah, he was a Lapchick protege, and I know when they won the NIT in my freshman year, your senior year in high school. They won the NIT, and their first victim was BC, and we went down. I can tell you the score: 114-92. And one of the McIntyres, I think Kenny, there were two McIntyre brothers, right? One of them had 42 points that day against us. And
why am I surprised that you knew the score of that game?
It stuck in my mind. Yes.
Welcome to the world of Bob Ryan, the human computer. And on that note, gentlemen, we're going to continue with Jimmy O'Brien and Bob and Louie Carnesecca. I just have to read this quick commercial because you guys are so expensive. So anyways, it's Prize Picks, the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less, or at least two players for a shot to win up to 200 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. So make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. Join now because this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. Did you get that, Bob? Picksmas. I don't write them, I just read them.
Right.
Okay, here we go. Steph Curry, what do you think? More than 5 3-pointers this week? Giannis, more than 35? That guy's been on fire. I'm liking Anthony Davis for more than 12 boards. Luka for more than 8 assists. So download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Again, use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, Run your game. Okay, continuing to talk about Louie Carnesecca. What do you think, Jimmy, that he did for the university? Because the reason I ask this is when I always talk, I hear about coaches, whether it be Paterno or Bobby Knight, and they were more than just coaches. They were faces of the school, and I can't think of anybody this is more the case than Louie Carnesecca at St. John's.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And if you look at the guys, the other people in the league at the time, a lot of those guys, I certainly was not, but a lot of those guys were. I mean, Rowley was Villanova, Boeheim was Syracuse, John certainly was Georgetown.
Right.
So there was a lot of that, and I think it's because a lot of guys back in the day stayed and coached for a long period of time at those schools. Now, guys are coming and going, guys get fired a lot easier. And I think the longer people stay, I think of Denny Crum at Louisville, certainly guys like that if you have an opportunity to stay at a place for a long period of time and you are successful, you have that ability to become the face of that university. And for the most part, it all has been pretty good. Louie certainly was one of those guys.
From what you remember and knew about him, was it surprising that he even lasted 3 years with the pros? Was he suited to be a professional coach? I didn't think he was.
Yes. So again, stories. There's always 100 stories. So my rookie year, I'm playing for the Kentucky Colonels. He's coaching the Nets. And Bob, you probably remember Rick Barry was playing for the Nets.
Yes, I do well remember.
Yeah.
I'll get to that one in a minute.
And those of us up here, but nationally, Julius Erving was playing at the time for a team in Virginia. So there were all those kind of guys. But Barry was playing for Louie. And Rick had kind of a funny game, as good as he was. The underhanded free throws, and he had a lot of stuff around the basket. And he would take a lot of these little shots in the lane, putting English on it and spins. And I'll never forget Louie's yelling out at him, Rick, and he's swearing a little bit. Damn it, Rick, will you stop with that junk? And Barry turns around and says, hey, Louie, I'm Rick Barry. Don't tell me how to play. Go sit down.
Wow.
And I'm saying to myself, oh, my God, is that what this is about? Like, he's going back at Louie. And Louie just turned around. He kept coaching. But because of that, I think, Bob, and the level of, I'm not sure that respect is the right word, because the guys in the pros respected their coaches. But now all of a sudden you're not coaching college kids. You're coaching grown men who have families of their own. Yep. And a lot of times these guys are going to say stuff back to the coaches. And this was years and years and years ago. You can just imagine what's going on now. But that was one of the cases where I'm thinking, boy, oh boy, coach, for me, this is Louie Carnesecca. And he's hearing this. So I never really thought that this was going to be the place that he was going to last a whole lot longer than that.
A quick aside, the Celtics once played an exhibition game against the Nets at the Island Garden in Hempstead. And I remember they dressed at they wouldn't dress there. The locker room was so filthy. And right. But Barry beat them with a bank 3-pointer. They beat the Celtics. And I remember being amazed that the Whopper, Billy Paltz,
of course,
held his own with Dave Cowens. I was crushed. I was mortified that the Whopper could play with Dave. I thought Dave would kick his butt. And the Whopper was a really resourceful player. He really was. He knew how to play basketball.
And you mentioned the Whopper is another guy from St. John's.
Yes, I know. He coaches
St. John's as well.
Yeah. Okay, I got to tell my one. I have one Louie story. I didn't know him very well. I encountered him in my professional duties a little bit, but this is my story. In 1984, I talked the Globe into sending me to Hutchinson, Kansas for the JUCO tournament. I was always fascinated with the JUCO tournament in Hutchinson, Kansas. So I got them to send me out there. Well, St. John's was recruiting a young man from the San Jacinto in Texas named Walter Burry. And they had basically gotten a verbal commitment from him, but they didn't have it. They didn't have him signed. And they were worried that he had still wanted to go make one more visit to Wichita State to see his good buddy, Gus Santos. And so Louie dispatched his chief assistant, Ron Rutledge, to babysit Walter Burry for the week in Kansas. Well, I got to know Ron a little bit that week. And Louie, the championship game's on Sunday afternoon. Louie comes in on Saturday, and I go to dinner with them. By the way, at the best restaurant in town, which was a steakhouse at the airport. But that's another story for another day. So we get to the game, and we are sitting, the three of us, at the top row of the bleachers behind the basket. That was our vantage point. In the course of the game, a Vincennes kid tries to throw an alley-oop to his center. Walter Burry intercepts the alley-oop with a big, I can still see it, with a big one hand, he was left-handed, big one-hand scoop, pitches it out, runs down the floor, gets the return pass, and dunks. At which point, the head coach of St. John's, all 5 feet, whatever, 5'6" of him, jumps up and utters the following: "I'd go anywhere to see this kid. I'd go to Calcutta," and sits down. That was Carnesecca, folks. I can't imagine John Wooden doing that. I can't imagine Jim Boeheim doing that, and I doubt that you would have done that either, Rob.
Yeah, Louie was, and by the way, Walter Burry wasn't too bad.
Next year, going to the Final Four.
Yeah, going to Hutchinson, Kansas. Let's see, Walter Burry.
That's my Louie story.
Yeah, very good. That's who he was. He was very excitable, even on the bench. But there's a ton of stories like that, Bob, all good ones too.
Let's face it. I mean, this was an era to me, because my favorite era of college basketball was the Big East, when, I think Jimmy, whether it be, I can't remember when Gary Williams left and you came in, but, that transition. And then, I just remember every year, to the coaches that went through the Big East. I mean, you went to Ohio State, Pete Gillen, Pitino, the coach at Texas, he was at PC2, Barnes. I mean, all of these, and St. John's and Syracuse, to me, it is the golden era of college basketball. The Garden in the spring, the Big East tournament, and I know UCLA had all those great championship years and Al Cindor and all that in Walton. It was the best era of college basketball. So, Jimmy, what was it like? You were in it.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. And I feel very fortunate personally that my athletic director was Bill Flynn.
Right.
And Bill Flynn was the AD when I was a student at BC. And there's no question, my first couple of years, we struggled. And we had to find how we were going to navigate our way through this. And then we got lucky and we got Billy Curley. And we got a couple of other guys. And then we became a pretty good team. And we had the thing going pretty good. But early on, it was a real struggle because there were no nights off in that league.
Oh.
And Gary, you might recall, my first couple of years, Compy Forum wasn't even in existence. And so they moved all of the league games off the campuses that they felt were too small. So Seton Hall had to move from their small gym to the Meadowlands.
Meadowlands, yeah.
Georgetown had to move from their gym. And we certainly had to move from ours. Providence had to move from on campus to the Providence Civic Center. St. John's went to the Garden. I mean, everybody was going to the big arenas. So we actually played 8 times a season for the first 2 years in the Boston Garden. Right. Never practiced, never had any connection to it other than playing those 8 games. And these guys were really, really good coaches. They all did a good job recruiting. Excuse me. And every game was physical. Every game was a battle. And you guys might recall the number of near fights that there were, because just so physical. I laugh now because I play some golf, and guys will kid around and they'll say, boy, that's pressure having to make like a 4 or 5 foot putt. And I'm saying, no, let me tell you what pressure is. Pressure is trying to get the ball over half court against Georgetown when those guys are guarding you up in your face. So guys got along off the court, but during the course of those games, boy, it was very, very competitive.
Obi, were you coaching when they instituted the 6 foul rule?
Yes, I was going to mention that. Bob, what a nightmare that was. So John pushed like crazy for the 6 fouls because his mindset was everybody wants to come to see the players. And his team was so aggressive that they would always be in foul trouble, but they had a lot of guys. So his theory was, why are we going to allow these best players to foul out? Let's keep them in the game. Well, that really benefited him. It really didn't help us at all. It lasted for 1 year, I believe. And because of that, guys became even more aggressive and the games became even more physical. And it was an experiment, and they had to get rid of that because there was a lot of even more near fights.
It wasn't pretty, I can tell you, from a fan standpoint. And I remember saying to people that in criminal cases, judges, instead of giving sentences, would send people to the Big East tournament.
I will tell you another funny story.
It wasn't pretty. While I'm shifting around here, while we have you, you had two very interesting coaches that you played for at Boston College. Of course, we know Bob Cousy. And what when you think of Chuck Daly, what do you think of?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So first, nobody's been luckier than I have. And, with a little humility, I might say that I also had an opportunity to play for Will Chamberlain when I played for San Diego in the in the ABA for a while. So who has played for 3 guys like that?
Really?
So
big resume.
Huge difference between, I go to BC for Cousy, and we all loved him. That was a unique experience. I only played for him for the 1 year because we played on the freshman team.
Yes.
And for Cousy, it was like, oh my God, like before I walk into the gym, I'm going to genuflect because Bob Cousy's in that building right there. And I know myself, I never, ever wanted the thought of him leaving practice any day and not in his mind knowing I'm his guy and he can count on me and I can play, and that's what this is all about. I never wanted him to walk out saying, I'm not sure if he's going to be good enough. So every practice for me was like the ultimate. But people will marvel at this, but it was so long ago. So Frank Power was the freshman coach. He was the headmaster at Charlestown High School. Jerry Friel was his assistant coach. He later became the head coach at UNH. Jerry was a grammar school teacher in Newton, and Cousy lived in Worcester. So if we had practice at 3:00 in the afternoon, we didn't see anybody till about 2. So you talk about guys in college being on their own. There was nobody minding the store. We had a good guy, a graduate student, Dave Philbin, who was kind of like helping. So Cousy was just about, this was our team. When Daly got here, this became the program. No. We started lifting weights. We started doing more running. And Chuck was like, came from Duke, and guys still tease me because Chuck wasn't Chuck when he got here. He was an assistant at Duke, and I remember saying, I was devastated when Cousy left because this is the reason why I came to BC.
Right.
And now, after 1 year, he takes off. And my first reaction was, who the blank is Chuck Daly. Like, who's this guy that's coming? Like, this is what we got? And then after 2 years, I mean, I fell in love with Chuck Daly, but he was only there for 2 years. It worked out great for me. I loved playing for him. And then people will be amazed to remember that Chuck Daly actually left Boston College to take the job at the University of Pennsylvania.
Right.
Because he was connected to Philly. He was connected to Rowley. But could you imagine, like, thinking that we're Boston College and our coach is leaving to go to the University of Pennsylvania? It was just a matter of fact that I think Penn got to the Final Four with our mutual friend. I think Bobby Bigelow was possibly on that team. They were really, really good. But you left BC to go
Right.
to Ivy League school.
Right.
Hard to imagine that. But so here I am. I get 3 years to play in college, 1 year for Cousy, 2 years for Daly. I mean, are you kidding me? So very, very fortunate.
Guys, I'm going to take another quick break. We'll get right back to it with Jimmy O'Brien. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only have incredible deals and great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So you pick an upcoming game on the app, browse through the seats on Game Time Picks, and then you can take a look at other deals like the Super Deal. And also, you can customize your spot. And you always get a chance to look and see what your view is from your seat. Right on your laptop, you know what you're buying, you know what your seats are, you know what the view is, so you know what you're buying. It's got the lowest price guarantee, even cancellation protection, job loss protection, toggling feature to show total upfront with no surprise fees at the checkout. And Game Time will credit you 110% the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? It is game time. Bob, I don't want to cut you off. If you have a question, go ahead.
Well, I want to get when Jimmy was coaching and at the high level, which includes going to a Final Four in 1999 with Ohio State. I always said that he was too honorable for this profession, even then. I can't imagine, Jim O'Brien, you negotiating the landscape of today in college sports.
Yeah, I would struggle with it, Bob. One of my former players, Daniel Abrams, is now just recently changed positions. He was doing the color for the BC games on the radio. But they have these positions now called GM positions of college programs.
Yes.
And I guess those guys are challenged with doing the NIL, basically the money deals.
Right.
Scouring the portal, trying to find guys that they're going to try to get involved and recruit. And I think the whole thing has changed. And you know yourself, and again, I keep going back because it seems so long ago, but the way I look at it was when we were in school, boy, oh boy, we were BC. This is our school.
Right.
We don't like those guys, whoever those guys were. Like, it's us against them, and that's the way that it was. This is our school. And now it seems to me it's more like it's free agency.
Well, it is.
Kids have agents. And Danny Ainge's telling me he sits down with agents, and they come to him and they talk to him about how much money they want to get for this kid. And I just don't know where it ends. And if you are not going to be the type of a school, it seems to me, that has the resources or the wherewithal to participate like some of the bigger schools we know do, that you're going to be, you're going to be mediocre. You're just going to be in the middle of the pack at best, because the kids are going to go with the deals. And some of the schools are struggling with having these deals. But that's what they're faced with right now. And if the kids don't like it and somebody else, A lot of the schools, they get poached by other schools. So people are trying to get kids from this. I don't know how the mid-major kids coaches do it. Because they get the high school kids that perhaps the big schools don't get. Those kids, after a year or two, mid-majors, become pretty good players. And the mid-major schools are going to be losing those kids because their programs are getting poached by the big schools. And the big schools, the coaches, nobody wants to recruit high school kids anymore because they don't have the time to grow the programs. You better get it done right now. So you look up and down these rosters and guys are playing with, 24, 25-year-old kids. And they're mature kids. The best teams are the mature kids. So I don't know how they're going to continue to go like this, but it's a different deal. And I don't know how the coaches coach the kids, because you got to handle the kids with kid gloves now. And, I never thought that I was somebody that was harsh with kids. I tried to be firm. But I think now guys have to be very, very careful what they say, how you go about doing this, because if a kid is on the fence and he's not playing, it's easy for these kids to leave because somebody else will give them some money to go.
Well,
So
the great Donnie Marshall, who I had a chance to work with, used to tell some, and I won't repeat them, some very colorful Jimmy Calhoun practice stories. Okay.
Well, we failed.
So that wouldn't work today.
It would be really, really difficult, I would think. Although, speaking of Calhoun and Connecticut, I guess Danny is pretty active on the sidelines as well, Danny Hurley. But we would be remiss if we didn't mention, when you were talking about the Big East coaches before, because Calhoun went to Connecticut, I think the year I went to BC. And how could you not mention Calhoun when you're talking about, guys that had success in that league? I mean, with that school, I was an assistant coach at UConn for 5 years with Don Perno. So I know what that place is like. And when you think about what that school has accomplished in men's basketball with Jim, the 1 year that Ollie was there, and now these 2 years with Danny Hurley, and not even to mention what Gino's done with the girls. I mean, what they've accomplished in basketball is like ridiculous. So, yeah, but Calhoun it'd be different for him these days.
Oh, he's a character, man.
Yeah. Many years ago, when they first started winning championships, I said that should put on his Hall of Fame plaque his most great distinction. He made Storrs, Connecticut a destination.
Yeah, he did.
He did.
Think about that, because there really is no Storrs. It's really Madison. And right? No, and it's a postal address.
Yes, exactly.
Go ahead, Bob.
No, that's all. That's it. No, it's now that Jimmy has kind of come full circle, because I always said, and I did say this out loud and in the print, he's got more of a Division III sensibility than a cutthroat Division I sensibility. And guess where Jimmy wound up, ladies and gentlemen, in downtown Boston.
Yeah.
With Gary Tanguay's supervision.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the mighty Emerson powerhouse.
Jimmy, you would just talk a little bit about, this experience and what it means to you.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that we go down this little road because one of my friends, Rico Cabral, by the way, was coaching at a Division III school, and they would play at Emerson. And I would go to Emerson because I live here in the Back Bay. Emerson, I would, like last night, I walked to Emerson through the neighborhood. It's a neighborhood school. And I would go to see him. And there was a guy who was the vice president of Emerson, Bill Gilligan, whose father was the track coach at BC, and Bill ran track when I was a student. So I bump into him, and he says, "You want to get into coaching? You have any?" And I'm saying, "I don't know, I'm not really sure." I knew I didn't want to get back in at a high level, but I kind of miss being in the gym. So the way it turns out, something happened with the coach at Emerson, and Gilligan calls me and says, "Can you coach our team for the last month?" And I said to him, Bill, I've already made a commitment and I've sent some money in to go to Florida. I'll be back in April. I can't do it now, but when I get back, I'll call you to see if, it's still available, but you need to go ahead and go find a coach. Long story short, I come back April 1st, call him. He says, I was hoping you were going to call me. I get the job at Emerson. Spend 3 years. Billy Curley came with me as my assistant. He's there now. I think he's in his 9th or possibly 10th year. And one of the absolute best experiences that I ever had. And why did I do it? I was able to walk there. Very good school academically, not crazy recruiting. And I find out that these kids are like really, really special kids. And it was every bit as important to them. And they took the basketball every bit as serious as the kids at BC or Ohio State did. And I'm proud to say that today, some of my closest former players are kids from Emerson College. And they're my favorite college team. I go to their games when I can. And just a really, really good school. A school I had no idea what was going on there. But it's pretty special. And they were telling me that I should write a book because it was like the difference between Division I and this Division III. For example, a couple of really quick little tidbits. We play Suffolk University, right? And we're playing at Suffolk up in Beacon Hill. And we have our stuff. There's our whole team. We're walking through the public garden, walking up past the State House to go play an away game. So guys say, Coach, how many times do you think maybe you walked to an away game? I say, yeah, well, this is a first.
I love it.
Then another time, I don't know what was going on. I think our season was over. The women at Emerson had a tennis match at, I think it was Wentworth.
Right.
And nobody was around. For some reason, we all had to drive the vans. Here's another thing. I actually was driving our team in vans to away games.
Sure.
So they asked me if I was available to take Emerson's women's tennis team by van to Wentworth because nobody else was around. I said, yeah, I'll do that. So I got all these girls in the back of this van and they're going through their girls' chit-chat.
Oh, yeah.
No idea who I am. It's pouring rain. We get to Wentworth and I pull up to the facility, but there's no place to park. So here I am, pull up. They all get out so they don't have to walk in the rain. I got to drive 2 blocks, park this van, and I'm the one stuck getting rained on, and I was drenched, sitting for 2 hours at Wentworth, waiting for these girls to finish up their match.
Did they win?
They did win, as a matter of fact. But it was all those kind of little things that make you say, in the long run, this is more part of the reality of what it should be like. So there was always those kind of little things going on there. And I actually loved the 3 years that I coached at Emerson. It's a great school. Billy now is coaching. A quiet secret is that Billy Curley is an exceptional coach. He's done a great job at that program. And last night, for example, they beat Babson by 2 points, close game at the end. He's done a remarkable job with the kids. He's getting international students.
Right.
Ironically, he has Ray Allen's son on the team this year. We had a chance to have Eddie Pickney's son on our team. He's had a lot of really high-profile guys. One of the kids playing for them now, his mother is the women's coach at Michigan. So there's a lot of interesting personalities, and it's a terrific school. A lot of people don't even know. Lastly, about Emerson, you'll get a kick out of this. Coach, where do they play? You got Conti Forum, you have Pauley Pavilion, Cameron Indoor Stadium. Where does Emerson play? 150 Beacon Street.
Right.
So that's the address. Walk in the front door, walk down about 3 levels to the basement. That's where they play, 150 Beacon. I get a kick out of that.
It's a great school. And the challenge with Emerson is the kids are smarter than the professors. I can tell you that.
Smarter than most of the coaches.
Yeah, they're amazing. I mean, they really are. I'm like, holy cow. Bob, I think we're good. This has been great. Jimmy, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure. You've always been a class act. And, you know, when Bob said he wanted to do this, I said, absolutely. Brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of CLNS Media Network. Pick more, pick less with Prize Picks.